All right, Chaver, today I want to say a very important story that goes as follows. It was in the time of the Tzemach Tzedek, and there was a desperate woman who came running into the main shul in Lubavitch, screaming, "Where is the Rebbe? I must see the Rebbe." And the Chassidim said, asked, "What's the matter? What's wrong?" She said, "My husband disappeared. I have no idea where he is. I was left on my own to take care of our son, who is a mute. He cannot speak. And I'm overwhelmed. My husband's gone. I don't know where he is. I can't remarry because I can't get a divorce from him. Because who knows? Maybe he was killed. Maybe he was captured by bandits. Maybe he just ran off. I must speak to the Rebbe to get direction." So the Chassidim direct her to the local Gabbai, who says, "I'm very sorry. The Rebbe does not take women into Yechidus. The Rebbe doesn't have meetings with the women." She says, "I must speak to the Rebbe." She's like, "Sorry, nothing happening." This poor woman is left confused, sobbing her eyes out. So some advise her, maybe speak to the Rebbe's wife, the Rebbetzin. She goes in and pours out her heart to the Rebbe's wife, who tells her a very good piece of advice. She says, "Listen, why don't you make a little note of all your troubles, write that down, give the note to your son. I'll tell you when my husband leaves his office, and the boy can sneak into the Rebbe's office, hide under the desk. And when the Rebbe walks in, he'll jump out and give the Rebbe the note." She says, "Okay, fantastic plan." She writes down her whole story of how her husband disappeared and her worries and troubles, and she hands it to her little boy. When the Rebbetzin signals, the boy comes in through the side room to the Rebbe's office. No one's in there, and he hides under the desk. As soon as the Rebbe walks back in, the boy pops up from under the desk and hands the Rebbe the note without saying a word, as he was mute. So the Rebbe looks at the note and he tells the boy, "Go tell your mother that your father can be found in this town." And he names the town. The boy marches out of the office to his worried, frantic, and hopeful now mother. And he says to his mother in a clear voice, "The Rebbe said father can be found in that town." The woman fainted on the spot. When she regained consciousness, she said, "I can't believe it. A miracle. My mute son has never said a word before in his life. Now the Rebbe gave him the power to speak." And now, full of joy, she bound off to hire a wagon to go to this town where she was so sure the Rebbe's bracha would come true. And indeed, she went there, she found her husband, and they got divorced, and she was able to continue in her life quite happily. Now the Chassidim all came running to the Rebbe, and they said, "Rebbe, you always tell us that you don't know how to do miracles. You always tell us you're no miracle doer. And now we saw a very clear miracle. You made the mute boy speak." So the Rebbe said, "What? No, I didn't do a miracle. It's just no one told me that the boy was mute." Fine. When the Rebbe's mother, the Chassidim were very excited with this story. But when the Rebbe's wife found out, she was not so impressed. She said, "By my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, they were cousins. It's about the Tzemach Tzedek and his Rebbetzin. By my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, when he was in Mezrich, there were miracles rolling under the table and no one bothered to bend over and pick them up." Meaning, not that there's any problem with miracles. The miracles, there was is a very good reason to be amazed when you see an open miracle. It's a very good reason to be inspired, to be uplifted. But she was trying to teach them that there's something deeper than miracles. But what the Rebbe really is not just a miracle maker. It's not someone who does these cool tricks. He's not someone who's just a holy man. He's a teacher. He's an educator. He is one who teaches you and allows you to tap in to your soul and connect to Hashem. So by Chassidim, miracles is always an incredible thing. But by the Chabad Chassidim, was something special. They saw more than that in their Rebbe. They saw the biggest miracle from their Rebbe was his teachings, was his Maimer. So, but saying a story of a Rebbe, whether of a miracle or of a lesson, was always one of the biggest fundamentals of Chassidus, in all kreisen, in all groups of Chassidim. By the way, if you guys ever read Shlomo Yosef Zevin's Sipurei Chassidim, it's an incredible collection of stories of all different Rebbes and Chassidim. And in the English version, there's Uri Kaplun translates it, and he writes something very interesting. He begins to reminisce about his childhood. When he was growing up in Melbourne, there was a group of Elter Chassidim there. This old Chassidim was sent there by the Friedrich Rebbe these are Russians, old timers. And he remembers being a little kid sitting around and hearing the stories and watching like the Chassidim just live with the story of their Rebbe. As a matter of fact, the Chassidim of the Magid used to say, these great tzaddikim, they would say, when we heard a Torah, when we heard a teaching from our Rebbe, That was the Torah Shebal Peh. That was the written Torah. That was just the explanation. But the Torah Shebechsav, the actual written Torah, not the oral Torah, the actual law, that was when we heard the story. Because the Chassidim story was Chassidus in practice, in action. I just want to say one more word. By the night of the Seder, there was one year, it was by the Pesach Seder, by the Tzemach Tzedek. And he said the following words. When we're saying that it's a mitzvah for everyone to tell over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and even if we were all very wise, all very knowledgeable, and all very understanding, it would still be a mitzvah for us to tell over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Right? And then it goes on to say the whole story about how you had all these rabbis who were such wise men, but nevertheless they sat telling over the story of leaving Mitzrayim the whole night. So the Tzemach Tzedek explained it as this. Even if we all had Chachma, Chachma was 100% as it should be. And all of us, our Bina was completely perfect. And even if all of us had our Das was completely perfect. Imagine this, if we were the ultimate of godly intellect, we had fixed up all our intellectual facilities, Chachma and Das. Nevertheless, mitzvah leinu l'saper. It's still a mitzvah for us to say the story, to say a chassidische maise, to sit around and delve into a chassidische story. And with this comes the next word, Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's how you go out of Mitzrayim. You go out of your own Mitzrayim, your own troubles and tribulations, your own slavitude. Just like our forefathers were enslaved, so too we find we're enslaved to negative emotions and influences. It comes out. How do we get out of that? Through the story. So he's telling his chassidim that even if you're someone who you're so wise, you're knowledgeable, you're understanding, everything's going great, nevertheless, you can never overestimate the power of saying a chassidish story. Because this is how you live chassidus. This is how the chassidus comes alive. We see in practical actions. This is how it reaches the heart. As a matter of fact, I just want to finish off one very quickly. I'm really not doing justice to this story by saying it so quickly, but there was one of the only disagreements, really, between the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, that the Rebbe wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe, why is it that in Chabad Chassidus we don't really focus on miracle stories? It's all known, the Chassidim from the Polish traditions, Polish Chassidim, they always spoke about miracles. Chabad, they didn't really focus on miracles, focus more on the teachings. So the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote a long answer explaining this basic point that we're more focused on the teachings and the meaning than on the fireworks of the story. And the Rebbe wrote back. It's very rare. The Rebbe was completely given over to the Frierdiker Rebbe and really didn't have anything he disagreed. But over here the Rebbe wrote back again and said, nevertheless, I agree with everything he said, but nowadays in such dark times, when not everyone can really apprehend Chassidus and not everyone is affected and we're really so deeply in Golus, we need these stories, because the story of a miracle is something that can break through the darkness that people experience. It's something that can lift up someone and inspire someone, no matter how deep down they are. So there's these incredibly powerful things. So that's just the introduction to the next class, where there's going to be a lot of stories in it. Fine, I'll see you then.